Why do I believe in Jesus? Long story short, my mum, God bless her, took us to church every Sunday. I was even an altar boy growing up. I got to 13 years of age and I decided at 13 I knew everything and that church was the single most boring place on the planet. And I told mum I'd never go to church again. And mum, God bless her, said, okay, because I think mum could see the long game. And then I lived my life without going to church for most of my teenage years. And then I got to my early 20s, 21, 22, and then I realized I didn't know anything. And I had a lot of questions and I was not really doing all that well providing the answers to all the questions that I had. My answers didn't seem to be working. So I found myself in a church in my mid-20s and then I found Jesus again. And the rest is history. A lot of people ask the question, why do you think Jesus is real? Or why do you believe in Jesus? I can tell you on a practical sense, I've seen my children being born. And I think when you go through that experience of seeing life just arrive in front of you, it's very hard not to ask some pretty deep questions about the universe. And when you see a life that has been created and is handed to you, and then you become a father or you become a mother, I can see. And I think most people would hope that there is somebody bigger than themselves actually there as a resource to be able to parent this new life and bring this new life through safely. So practically when I saw the birth of my kids, I knew that God was real. Faith is about believing that God is there for you, but not understanding how or why or when or where. And sometimes God is there for you and you didn't even realize it. And it was only looking back through whatever chaos or mess of a journey you've been through, where you desperately needed God to arrive. It's only looking back where you can see how He has helped you through. And I think the faith is just holding on blindly to the fact that you're not in control and that your answers are probably not the best answers. But if you can just hold on to the belief that God is there for you, but maybe not in the way that you think, and maybe not in the manifestation that you wanted, faith is that feeling. Faith is that understanding that it's going to be okay, but not in the way that you thought it was going to be okay. That's what faith means to me. I just want to encourage everybody that may be waiting for the big faith story, the big reveal, because as I said, I grew up in a Catholic church and I ended up in my mid-20s attending a Pentecostal church. And the great thing about church is that there's a church for everybody, and there's a church for every personality, and there's a church for everyone going through any particular journey of life. And I do love the Pentecostal faith, but there is a tendency when you first go to a church that's a Pentecostal faith to be surrounded by people that have these amazing testimonies. And they've thought about their testimony and they speak about their testimony, and every testimony for me going to church again for the first time in my early 20s was everyone's testimony was like a Hollywood production, and it had a beginning and a middle and an end, and there was a twist at the end, and it was always great because it was always, and then Jesus showed up in my life and I was saved and all these miraculous things happened. So coming out of being a young person that went to church and was trying to find a relationship with God, and then moving into my young 20s and being told you're going to get this relationship with God, you're going to have this moment, and then you're going to truly understand and you will just never look back. So I was waiting for these massive fireworks and explosions and car accidents and near-death experiences, and none of that happened until one day I was going over and over in my head. I had a lot of thoughts about what a relationship with God was supposed to be like, and what does it look like, and what is everyone else telling me it looks like for them, when really we should just be worried about what it looks like for us. Even on a level of that God doesn't necessarily interact with us the same way He interacts with somebody else. So if somebody says, I heard from God, it could be that He is speaking to them, but other people, it's through music, or it's through artwork, or it's through just being completely silent. So that was a good learning for me. But I think my testimony is that if you're out there waiting for that first experience with God, especially if you're just coming back to church, or if you haven't necessarily even thought about having a relationship with God until right now, maybe during this period of Easter. Some of the great testimonies are just really simple and quiet and small and personal. And that was my experience. Somebody came up to our church one day as I was thinking and praying and going, where's my big connection? Where's my big testimony going to happen? And they said something along the lines of, stop waiting for God to turn up in your life in a huge way. God's only going to turn up for you when you're ready just to turn up for God. And I think in a way that really spoke to me about simplifying everything. Don't worry about my expectations. Don't worry about everybody else. God's got a plan, not just for your whole life, but for moments along that whole life. And my testimony about finding God is very simple. I stood up at church, I went to the front of the church and gave my life to the Lord. I was prayed for, and then I went on the day. And we don't all need these flashy, expensive Hollywood production testimonies. Sometimes we just need something small and simple and beautiful. Easter is a massive moment in a lot of people's lives because more often than not, we either appreciate Easter for what it truly is, or maybe you are part of a family that just goes to church and it's just a routine thing, but Easter's the big day. It might be the only day that you end up going to church in the year other than Christmas. But you might have questions. You might start asking yourself, what is this all about? And I went to Alpha very early on when I came back to the church in my mid-20s. And the best thing about Alpha was that there is no beginning, middle, and end for Alpha. Like, you can actually turn up and you can start being very disruptive straight away. You can ask any question you like, anything that's on your heart, anything that you're just thinking in your head. Anything that doesn't make sense about the Bible or the Word of God or what God is or who Jesus is or how relationships work. There's no time in Alpha where you are sat down and told to think a specific way or told this is the only way. You can get in there, you can ask questions. I asked so many silly questions at the start of my Alpha course, and the person running the course was ready for it, because that's what it's all about, having a discussion. It's all about the unknown. And it's all about trying to find your way through that to the truth. But we all start in different places. The truth is there, and that's God. But where we start on that journey can be a million different places. And with Alpha, you get to start from wherever you want to start. It could be a deep and meaningful relationship with God, and you're just back at Alpha just to really solidify that relationship. It could be you're completely against anything to do with the church, anything to do with Jesus. And at the very least, you get to sit down with people who are on board, and then you can have a dialogue. And it's an open-minded dialogue. It's an open conversation about, this is where I'm at, and I want to know how to get where you might be.